Hello, everybody. Welcome to the SoxProspects.com podcast. We are the web's #1 source for our information on the Boston Red Sox farm system from top to bottom, from Fort Myers to Pawtucket and all stops in between. Thank you for the download. I am your host. My name is Chris Hatfield. I am the executive editor of Sox Prospects. I am joined, as always, in the room by our official bird hunter, Firefly the Cat, and on the line by our director of scouting, Ian Kundle. Ian, what's going on, man? It's the weekend. You're watching some footy, I believe. What's going on in the Spain-Russia game?
I'm actually not watching it because I'm a consummate professional and focusing 100% on the podcast right now.
Look at you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Is Spain already winning like 4-0 or something?
No, it was 1-0 last time I looked.
Okay, fair enough. Well, thank you all for the download. One thing we want to mention up front is it is the Sox Prospects donation drive. We tell you every episode that you can support the podcast with the per episode pledge on patreon.com, and that's a great way to support us. We appreciate all of our patrons. Might as well give a shout out here to our $5 level Patreon supporters. That includes Sox signatures, Lendell Martin, Kirby Miller, Gerardo Iantosca, Kyle Kostick, Tyler Woodrow, Jeff Trainer, David Nardone, Tim Harding, Hurricanes 1, Bill Stanton, Deb Kendall, Evan Kirkwood, and Ian, 2 new additions to the $5 tier, and Chris Fox and James O'Hara. So we want to thank all of our patrons on patreon.com. But in addition to patreon.com, you can support us through the donation drive. Information is available on the top post on our news page. That's news.soxprospects.com. Or to contribute, you can just head over to soxprospects.com/donate.htm. Make sure you add the HTM at the end. The donations go to cover things like our trip to spring training, so we can see all of these guys, get the info that you want to hear about, so on and so forth. And the final thing I want to mention is send your emails to podcast@soxprospects.com. As I always like to say, we want to talk about what you want to hear about. Ian, we've got a lot of stuff happening. We've got a trade. We've got new rankings. We've got draftees signings. We've got international free agents that'll be signing as people are hearing this. Where do you want to start? I'll let you pick where we go first. Want to start with the trade?
Sure. Let's just get that out of the way before we pivot into the everyone is hurt rankings / draftees.
Yeah, it's wow. I mean, just the system. I mean, I think Ben Crockett must have gotten a cursed monkey paw or something and brought it back from his vacation this offseason or something like that, because my word, the farm system. Anyway, the Red Sox recently acquired for the Major League roster from Toronto, nice rare in-division trade, first baseman / outfielder Steve Pearce. Ian Pearce acquired basically to be a right-handed bat, more or less off the bench. Let's be honest here. And in exchange for Pearce, the Blue Jays received Salem Red Sox infielder, and I say infielder because in addition to playing short, he'd taken to playing some second and third recently, Santiago Espinal. We talked a little bit about his scouting report. We updated it that night, coincidentally, of course.
It was in before he got traded. It's just ironically, anyway, that all happened the same day.
I went in to do it that night as he was getting traded. At first, I was like, oh no, Espinal, because he was one of like 3 guys having a good season in the farm system right now. But I'm okay with the give. I'm okay with the trade. Where do you come down?
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. I think someone, I don't remember where it was, made a pretty good point that I wonder if the Red Sox gave up a little more because the Blue Jays are eating enough of Pierce's contract that gives the Red Sox wiggle room still under the tax threshold of $237 million. I think that's definitely what happened because my first glance was Espinal for Pearce. Like I would have thought Pearce would be like a player to be named later or something.
Right.
But if you're, the Blue Jays are eating like $1.8 million of his contract. And when I heard that, it was like, oh yeah, that makes sense then, because that's not an insignificant amount of money. So given where they're at tax wise, and obviously you don't want to go into the tax if possible, as David Dombrowski, I think, mentioned during a press conference, a few days ago or right after the trade was announced, they don't want to go in. They will if they have to, but they'd prefer not to, because I believe the penalties are obviously the more tax money and you lose 10 spots in the draft and some international money, and obviously you don't want to do that.
You don't lose international money.
Okay, it's just 10 spots in the draft?
It's 10 spots in the draft, yeah. There was one Red Sox beat writer, who I won't name here, was saying in the offseason that if you went over the 237 mark, there's international money involved, and I kept trying to implore him
Gotcha.
change that because that was not correct because I've read the CBA and it does not say that. But
you've done your lawyering things.
I've done my lawyering. Yes.
Anyway, so you don't obviously want to lose 10 spots in the draft because that's, I don't know how much if you have the draft slots open, but that's also a decent amount of money off your draft signing budget for next year if you do that. So it is kind of a penalty in that regard. You're losing money. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think that they gave up someone who is kind of repetitive in the system. I mean, Espinal's had a very good year, and he's probably been their most consistent performer position player-wise. I'm trying to look down the list.
Arguably, yeah. By the way, just because you asked, the Red Sox picked 26th this year. If they had instead picked 36th, the slot at 26 was $2,552,800. And at 36, the slot value is $1,967,900. So
it's like $600K.
It's something like that. 255,2800 minus 1,967,900. No, they did that wrong. Yeah, 585,000 basically.
So it's basically signing Nick Northcutt or something.
Yeah, literally.
The difference there.
Literally.
So, I mean, that's not an insignificant amount. I mean, that's a top 100 player right there that you can't sign. So obviously they don't want
to
go
you're
over
picking
the tax
later,
line.
obviously.
Yeah, very true. So obviously they don't want to go over the tax line if possible. And I think that they needed bench bat help, especially with Sam Travis, who we'll probably mention in the rankings, just having a terrible year in Pawtucket and not looking like he's going to be a major factor at the major league roster. They went out and got someone who basically does his role and is just 35 years old and a proven big league bat. And when you're competing, that's what you have to do. So, I mean, I'm fine with it. Espinal, his ceiling, I don't think I saw like a utility player at that, which, I mean, could be a very useful player because he's got some contact skills, though the approach is a little still inconsistent. But he can play defense. He can run a little bit. He's good, athletic. But I don't think they're giving up a player with considerable upside. So, it's fine.
As I tweeted, to me, this is, again, it's really clear now that Dave Dombrowski has an archetype for a player he likes to trade. It's a player who, is potentially at the peak of his value. Espinal having kind of a career year and potentially playing above the scouting, right? I mean, he was hitting 313, 363, 477 with 9 steals and 10 attempts. Hitting, he had 7 home runs at the break after having 4 all of last year. Not even at the break.
He had 4 career home runs coming into this year.
Right. Well, I mean, he played 26 games in the Gulf Coast League when he got drafted.
Oh, right. He was a 2016 guy.
Yeah. And of course, the funny thing with him, every time you see Santiago Espinal, especially because there was a different Espinal in the system at one point, I always think like, oh, he was an international free agent. No, he was a 10th round draftee in 2016 that they signed for $50K.
Yeah, that's a pretty good scouting
which is
job.
A great get. Yeah, very good scouting job. But he was a guy who could have been at the peak of his value. It's entirely possible. I mean, it's kind of funny because we started hearing people saying, okay, so is he going to get promoted to Portland soon? Like he's kind of, as I'll mention in a minute more, there are 2 shortstops on the Salem roster. He's having a really good year. And you start to wonder, like, was he getting kept in Salem to kind of goose his numbers a little bit and, make him look a little better so that you don't promote him to Portland only to have him get maybe
Scuffle
overmatched a little bit. Yeah. So it was kind of an interesting thought. But again, a guy who could be at the peak of his value, a guy who's redundant. He wasn't even the best shortstop prospect on his own team. That would be C.J. Chatham. Not that Espinal's value decreases because of that, but again, it's just there's some redundancy there. You're not creating a hole in your system by trading him. So it's interesting there.
And he's like, as the Red Sox have position player short, he wasn't going to be a starter for the Red Sox. So
well, and that's the third piece of it is kind of redundancy at or near the major league level. Even if you're looking at Espinal as a utility player, which I think he could be a very useful utility player, right? He's a guy who could have value to a major league club. We're not playing him down for that reason or anything like that. But it's, you look and they have Holt on the major league roster, Lynn behind him, maybe Chad De La Guerra is kind of a similar profile in terms of how versatile they are. It's kind of the bat to glove ratio and things like that and value. I mean, I think he's more valuable than a De La Guerra, but again, it's the type of guy they have.
Netzer on his own team, Brett Netzer too. He just can't play shortstop.
Netzer's probably second base only, but
he might be able to fake it at third, but not sure.
But what I'm saying is kind of at or near the major league level. They already have these kind of guys. So those are the three things that, most prospects that they trade, that's what they see. And, it's kind of funny. I actually was thinking about whether or not we should talk about this, but, the Red Sox tomorrow is the we're recording this on July the 1st. On Monday, July the 2nd is the opening of the international free agent signing period. And
they're definitely making trades today. It's going to be like 20 minutes after.
I guess. Well, last year they did them on the 2nd.
Was it
they
the
traded?
second?
Yep. They traded Nick Longy to not the Cards, Cincinnati for significant international signing cap space, and then they traded Stanley Espinal and who's the other one? Why can't I remember the other? Imeldo Diaz.
Yeah.
For less space, but some space. And those happened on the 2nd, and you just kind of look in the system, and you kind of wonder. There are guys who I think I could see them trading. I don't know if you want to actually go there, but
I think one of the Greenville.
I could see one of the Greenville guys.
One of the Suarez, Lozada, Cedrola, someone from that group.
Yeah, the fact that Cedrola is not in Salem makes me wonder if he's.
He's like 5'8". I'm not that worried.
No, I know. Well, I'm just saying. No. I'm just saying. There's no reason for him to still be in Greenville.
Oh yeah. I agree.
It's really confusing.
They're gonna. I think Eddie Romero has already come out and said that they're looking to acquire more money, so they're gonna have to trade something. And as we saw last year, given if they want to add whatever, you can add 50% of your budget.
50 or 70. I think it's 70, maybe.
Okay. Well, anyway, there are plenty of teams that are still in the penalty / don't sign international guys. Mm-hmm. Well, there's one team that doesn't do that. Then there's a few others that are in the penalty. And so there's going to be plenty of suitors.
It's another 3/4, I think.
It's just about finding a team that, maybe values a guy that you have more than you yourself do. And then just obviously figuring out a deal. But I think it's probably tomorrow, those will come down the pipeline, and we'll be on Twitter to discuss them since it's vacation week.
They signed so many guys last year. If you go to our international free agent signings page,
that's why guys pop up on pitching logs, and I'm like, I've never heard of that person. Why? Oh, because they're one of 600 international guys they signed last year.
Right.
And to be fair, I like that strategy though. That's what I would if I were them. Because
they're all getting $1,000. Sure.
The international market is so volatile that if you can give me sign your 3, 4, 5 big ticket guys and then take 50 and give them between 1,000 and 10K.
Yeah.
And figure out, who's good and who's not, and just cut the rest immediately. But
it seems like a good time to transition actually really quick into, I guess, a preview of sorts. The only top international guy who the Red Sox are currently tied to is outfielder Eduardo Lopez out of the Dominican Republic. He's ranked 20th. What's that?
It's strange that they're not tied to anyone else, to be honest.
We'll see.
Unless
they're trying to get Victor Mesa out of Cuba.
Which I hope, just for the fact that we could having a guy named Victor would be sweet.
And all the airplane references that the old folks listening to this podcast would make. I'm sure that goes way over your head.
I've never seen Airplane, so yeah.
Oh, you should. It's great. But anyway, Eduardo Lopez, outfielder, ranked 20th on Baseball America's rankings. Those are done by Ben Badler, who we've had on the podcast before. He projects that Lopez will sign for a bonus in the $1.5 million range with the Red Sox as the favorites. One of the best hitters and more skillful players in the Dominican in this year's class. Switch hitter, smooth fluid stroke from both sides. Simple compact swing, back control, eye-hand coordination. Seldom swings and misses. Line drive hitter with doubles pop, given his build, which is 5'11", 170. His offensive game will likely be built around his ability to get on base more than on power. Talented hitter, but below average speed, might be short for center field, so going to a corner would place greater demands on his power developing. Given his youth and physically underdeveloped frame, it's possible that his speed and 40 to 45 arm could still tick up. Strong defensive instincts.
How much money do they have?
I don't know.
Isn't it it's a flat?
2018.
Is it 475 again?
MLB International signing bonus caps. Riveting radio. Here we go. Bonus pool amounts for 2018-19 are... all right, the Red Sox have $4,983,500.
So they can basically get up to like add another
4,983,500 times
like 3.75.
8.7 million, basically.
3.87 million?
No, 8. What?
Oh,
I'm saying the total figure.
Yeah, no, I was just spitballing or trying to figure out.
And there are the A's, Astros, Braves, Cardinals, Nationals, Padres, Reds, and White Sox are in the penalty and can't sign players for more than $300K.
Yeah. So getting up to 8.7 when you're only linked with one guy with 1.5, I mean, there's got to be some other stuff going on there then.
Well, we'll see. I mean, Anthony Flores was a guy who was not ranked in last year's international class to sign for the bonus he got. And he has probably been one of the best stories in the system so far this year, in theory.
Until he's hurt.
Until he got hurt, like everybody else. And I guess that's probably... We're all about these transitions today, Ian. Do we want to transition into the rankings then, I guess? And we'll talk about the draftees as we go.
Yes, let's do it.
New rankings went up today. It's July the 1st. And no change at the top, but Ian, changes pretty much everywhere else. Yeah, so this month, Michael Chavis, who is supposed to debut this probably today, I guess, for Lowell. You said the reports are that he's going to play first, second, and third?
Correct. And I should be seeing him tonight, so that'll be interesting.
So, yeah, he's going to start with Lowell, get his feet underneath him, and then eventually move up to Portland. At this point, I'm thinking not going to get to Pawtucket this year, but who knows? I mean, if he's playing second base, you've got to think that's kind of we may have room on the Major League roster if everything goes perfectly sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, considering they had to sign Brandon Phillips, I don't think it's a good sign for Dustin Pedroia's outlook the rest of the season. So, well,
Phillips is also a guy that they're going to have playing some third base as well, and you could see him starting against tough left-handers at third. I think it's more of an indictment of Eduardo Lopez than anything. Or not Eduardo Lopez.
Eduardo Nunez.
Eduardo Nunez. I always want to call him Lopez.
Yeah, he's not very good.
I mean, I think it's more of an indictment of him than anything.
Yeah, you might agree with that because they don't have really anyone. I mean, you have Zhu Wei Lin, but part of what Nunez was supposed to bring was he can hit a little bit off the bench, whereas Lin, if you have him as a bench guy, he's not going to be much. There's not much offensive potential. And so Phillips could potentially do that. The problem is he doesn't play shortstop, but with Brock Holt, you can kind of get away with that.
You got me mid-bite of oatmeal. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Next up, Brian Mata at number 2 and Tanner Houck at number 3. Sorry. We flipped them, Ian, and I think, at least for me, a couple things played into this. One, the fact that I think, personally, looking back on last month, I kind of wanted that one back, putting Houck ahead of Mata. Mata's kind of walking the planet right now, but everything else is good. He's inducing a lot of weak contact, and I think it's, frankly, just learning how to induce bad contact, in part leading to the walks. I mean, he's got a ground ball to fly ball ratio of 4-1.
Which is pretty good for the Carolina League.
That's really good generally.
Yeah.
Frankly. I mean, that's like sinker baller type stuff.
Yeah, and we've heard reports that his velo is ticking up. He's now supposedly, or someone mentioned that they saw him touching 97 now. So if that's the case, he could also be adjusting to throwing. I mean, that would be 3 miles an hour harder than I've ever seen him before, I think.
Right.
And usually he sits like 90, 92, or he used to. Mm-hmm. So if the velo is ticking up to, the command will take some time there, and that could explain partially why he's walking a bunch of people too. Yeah,
I mean, on the ground ball to fly ball ratio, he's at 4-1. In the system, the next highest pitcher who's got 20 innings is Brian Bello in the DSL at 2.7. The next highest stateside guy above 20 innings is Jonathan Diaz with 2.65.
Yes, that's pretty good.
So, I mean, he's having a great year with everything but the walks. He's got 50 and 61 innings. So you'd like to see that get better. The other thing, apparently Tanner Houck is now back to primarily throwing his sinker, his two-seam, I guess, as his primary fastball. I just we've talked about it at length, Ian, but just the experiment there is just, it's interesting to me. They've kind of been doing this, and I mean, hey, at least they're not just like fighting it if it's not. I mean, I don't want to say not working, but if they realize, okay, you know what, he was better off with the two seam. It's just curious to me because we were literally saying this at the beginning of camp, and you said this last year after seeing him in Lowell.
I mean, his fastball, his four seam it was just straight. I mean, and it didn't do anything. So I don't know. Right. He's had 3 pretty good starts since he switched back, in the sense that he didn't give up many runs, which actually probably doesn't really matter. But he's still walking too many guys and not missing that many bats. So he did have 7 strikeouts and only 1 walk in his last start. So if it's something that he's more comfortable with, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense. And we'll see, if with that, I don't know, I haven't read if he's going back to his old delivery too. But
the delivery, sorry, just to interject, I think the delivery changes were more just part of throwing the four seam more.
That's what I mean. So I'm wondering if back he's going to drop that arm slot down a little bit. And go back to more of what looks like probably a bullpen profile. So we'll see what happens with him going forward. But I wouldn't be surprised if he starts in Salem again. Yeah. Next.
I mean, he's still going to, he's still adding the knuckle curve. Like, they're not completely backing off on everything. It's just the fastball. They don't want him to not throw the four seam, but maybe it was just a development point having him throw that primarily. Who knows? But, just interesting. I would say the two of them are probably both kind of trending up this month for me a little bit. The walks are still way too high for me to get too excited, but
it's just weird. That whole team is just walking.
Yeah, it's weird. It's really, really weird.
So I don't know.
Anyway, all right. First debut and first bad news is first rounder Tristan Casas debuts at number 4. Even before,
played one whole game.
2. Well, I guess one whole game, and then came out of the second game. Tristan Casas, in his second game, in his first game playing third base, dove for a ground ball and tore the UCL in his thumb. He is out for the season after thumb surgery. Apparently they're hoping, according to reports, he might be ready for instructs, which sounds about right. Based on the multiple players on my fantasy team who've had similar injuries and surgeries this year, 6 to 8 weeks, I think is the time frame.
Yeah, and instructs will start end of September. So,
he should hopefully be ready for instructs, definitely be ready for 2019. Just not a good break. And we might as well at this point talk about the next highest debut is second rounder Nick Decker, the outfielder for the GCL Red Sox, who hadn't debuted yet. It was kind of interesting. He had signed, he was official, he was assigned to the roster, and hadn't debuted yet. And then we had caught wind that he has been spotted wearing a hard cast on his right hand in Fort Myers.
Yeah, don't want to speculate,
system
but
year, man.
That's a brutal break.
We've heard things, nothing we can go with, but
the two guys you give over $1 million to in the draft are both injured right now.
My goodness, it's just.
I mean, long term, it doesn't change like their prognosis. They're both exciting players, but it's these missed reps. I mean, it'd be interesting to add up how much time their top guys have missed over the last couple of years. Because between those two, you got Groom, you got Chavis. They seem to just get a bunch of guys who just CJ Chatham, who just injuries. It seems
it's the
very
cursed
excessive.
Monkey paw. Cursed monkey paw, man.
Oh yeah, it's just. Ugh.
Yeah, might as well take this opportunity to update everyone. The Red Sox are basically done with their draft signings. We usually do a July 15th update to get the final signees and the rankings, but I don't even know if we're going to have to. We'll do one just to, especially if, probably to get the international guys on there that need to go on there. but Tristan Casas, they selected in the first round. He signed for slot at pick 26 for $2,552,800. Decker at 64 in the second round signed for a little bit over slot. He got $1.25 million. Slot was a little over $1 million. So he got a little bit over slot. Their third round pick, Durbin Feltman out of TCU, signed for slot at pick 100. That's $559,600. He made his debut last night, I believe, throwing to a scoreless for the Lowell Spinners. Fourth rounder Cole Cottom signed for $375K, a little bit under slot. Catcher He's in Lowell. Fifth rounder Thad Ward, right-hander out of Central Florida, signed for a little bit under slot at $275,000. He's in Lowell. He hasn't pitched yet. Also in Lowell are sixth rounder Devin Granberg, the outfielder. Seventh rounder Jaron Duran, who's playing second base, and apparently has also seen a little bit of time in center, Ian, which is interesting. Eighth rounder Eli Marrero.
They announced him as a center fielder. So.
Well, but I think that means less than we tend to ascribe to it. Because I remember seeing Emil Sade in Greenville one year and asked him about Jagger Rusconi being announced as an outfielder, and he was like, "What? I didn't even know they did that." So I don't think that necessarily means as much. It might just be the scout that called it in or something, put him as that. Catcher Eli Marrero, he is in the Gulf Coast League. He signed for slot in the eighth round. Ninth rounder Brian Brown out of NC State, left-hander, and 10th rounder Grant Williams, infielder out of Kennesaw State, both signed for $2,500 each. They're both in Lowell. Two over slot later round signings. In the 11th round, Nick Northcutt got $565,000, so third round money basically. He accounts for $440,000 against the draft cap. And 21st rounder Brandon Howlett. Both of those guys are third basemen out of high schools. Northcutt is from Ohio. Howlett is from Florida. Howlett got $185,000, so $60,000 over slot. Both of those guys are in the GCL. You can see the rest of the guys who've signed on the draft history page. You can get the link at the top from SoxProspects.com. Good group of draftees if they're playing, Ian. But kind of interesting they got it done quick this year.
Yeah, and they have like a little over $100,000 left, which looking they probably. I mean, we don't know what the bonus for the 12th rounder Chase Shugart is yet. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if some of it's going there, and then obviously they might try to maybe get one more guy late, but it looks like, they're pretty much wrapped up things. So we'll see. Hopefully we can see him on the field at some point.
Anyway, rounding out the top 10 is Jay Groom at 5, Jalen Beeks at 6, Mike Schwarin at 7, Josh Ockamy at 8, CJ Chatham at 9, and of course, as mentioned, the injured Nick Decker at 10. From 11 to 20, we've got some movement, Ian. Some guys, who should we talk about? I
would say probably Flores, and then the relievers are worth mentioning.
So in the DSL, Danny Diaz and Anthony Flores, who are kind of the 2 and 2A signees in last year's class behind the late Daniel Flores, unfortunately, who of course passed away. But Diaz and Flores are off to pretty good starts, honestly. Diaz, he stays put at 14, but that's kind of like moving up because of draftees entering ahead of him, bumping everyone down. Interesting in that he's only hitting 245, and he's apparently just displaying an incredibly aggressive approach. He's got 27 strikeouts in 102 at-bats. But he's hit 6 home runs, type of power we haven't seen in the DSL in a long time. We've seen that kind of power from guys, but not from new draftees, honestly. And actually, in this number of games, we really haven't seen that kind of power.
That's insane.
Exactly. I mean, we've seen guys hit 6 and 8 home runs over the course of a DSL season, not in the course of a month. That is a lot of power for a DSL kid. Slugging 490, even though he's only hitting 245 with a 291 on base. A lot of pop from him. Good to see. Apparently, he's also getting a little bit of work at first base in addition to third base.
Well, that's partly because Alex Spear, I think, was mentioned in an article that Diaz is now 6'4", 220. So we have him listed at 6'1", 170. So when you're that big already, we haven't seen him yet, but that sounds like he's on his way to a first base profile eventually.
Yeah, it's a big boy.
As a 17-year-old, already that big, yeah. And then Flores, obviously, has also been very good, and he's now stateside.
Yeah, he
hasn't played.
In 13 games, he's in the DSL. He hit 347, 439, 510. Really great offensive line from a guy who apparently has the tools to stay at shortstop, based on what we're hearing. Exited his last game on June 18th, and he hasn't played since. But we kind of first caught wind of this on his social media. But he is apparently in Fort Myers. It really wasn't clear whether it was because of an injury or because he was getting promoted to the GCL. Apparently, he is in fact getting promoted to the GCL. It's just that he is sitting with what Spear reports is, quote, general soreness. Whatever that means. Kind of an interesting thing. We'll see if that winds up being all it is, or if there's something not getting reported or what. But always nice to see, these guys debut and get promoted to the GCL. So he's all the way up to 15. And he actually had, if I could pull up, it's a pretty big jump, even though he was, let me see here. I'm going to pull up the numbers. Sorry. Oh, I had a bookmark. Oh, well. Yeah, so last month Flores was 25th, so it's not only a 15-spot jump, but he's jumping up 2 more spots in a way because of the draftees ahead of him, and 2 more spots because of the draftees behind him. So it's really more like a 13 or 14-spot jump. So heck of a jump for him this month. Love what we're seeing out of Flores. I could see Flores and Diaz maybe top 10 this offseason. I think I'll go with that hot take, Ian, if they keep this up.
Yeah, maybe.
It depends.
I mean, they're 2 guys who have significant upside, and you can't say that about a lot of guys in the system. So,
I mean, if Danny Diaz hits 10 home runs in the Dominican Summer League, I don't know. That's got to be a top 10 profile for me. And then if Flores goes stateside and hits in the GCL. Yeah,
I mean, with Flores it'll be easier because we'll have reports on him, but yeah, we'll see.
Debuts in the second 10. Nick Northcutt at 16 and Durbin Feltman at 17. Northcutt has gotten 25 at-bats in the GCL. Feltman threw a single inning and struck out 2, making his debut. A couple nice debuts there. Rounding out, we should mention the back of the top 10. We don't have any reports on Northcutt or Feltman yet, so not a lot to say there, but couple of relievers behind Feltman, and Travis Lakins at 18, which sounds like he fell, but again, 4 draftees entering ahead of him. So I think he basically dropped a spot or 2, and you can probably attribute that to Flores and Diaz moving up more than anything.
Well, it was also that he's moved to the bullpen full time.
Right, but my point, but he's pitched well. We already kind of had him there. I mean, he had already moved last month. He dropped 3, but I would argue again, 2 of those spots are because moving Diaz and Flores ahead of him. The only other guy who moved ahead of him is Bobby Dahlbeck.
Yeah.
So
sure. Yeah, I don't know. For me, it's just the reason I would have had him if he was still a starter. I would have had him ahead of those draftees, but because he's now a reliever, that's kind of where I bumped him down a little bit.
Right, and he's followed by Ty Buttrey at 19 and Sam Travis at 20. Just kind of interesting, Ian. We've got a couple of relievers there. Buttrey, you had a report on this month. You want to talk a little about him, and then we can get into Travis a little bit.
Yeah, no, I saw Buttrey, a couple weeks ago, and he was he's throwing really hard. He was up to 99, I want to say, or 97, and the changeup is legit, and he's just been shoving over the last month. I don't know if you can bring up the stats. I think I can.
It's a little more than a month, actually. I'll bring him up, but you can talk about what you saw.
But it's 2 major league quality potential plus pitches to better. The fastball could be a plus pitch, maybe plays down a tick because of the command profile. And then the changeup is a plus pitch, kind of looks like a splitter at times, but it's a really good secondary pitch, and I think it's going to miss bats. And with him, it's just the question of will he throw enough strikes? Because if he does, he's struck out this year in Pawtucket 36% of hitters, which is a jump. Last year, his career high before this was 29% with Portland last year. So he's just striking out everyone. And if he can just keep the walk rate down, and this year in Pawtucket, his walk rate is 7%, which is his lowest since he was down, or 7.8%, sorry.
Yeah.
Which is his lowest since 2014 in the GCL. So he's cut down the walks. He's striking out everyone. And, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, so looking at his numbers, I mean, you could play the arbitrary endpoints game, but just to pick one, since the start of May, in 25 innings, he's allowed 16 hits, 7 walks, striking out 34 in 25 innings of the 91 at-bats. Or he's faced 99 batters, and he struck out 34 of them. So, that's a heck of a strikeout rate. If you want to throw one more on there, I mean, that's a 34% strikeout rate. So he's striking out a third of hitters he's facing. So he's had only one home run allowed as well. So he's been very good. He had a scoreless streak entering last night when he gave up, or not last night, 2 nights ago, of 10 appearances. Over in 13 innings, he allowed 7 hits and 3 walks, striking out 19. So he's having a very good run of things right now.
And the raw stuff is there. Like, he's one of those guys that when you see them, you're like, okay, that's a major league reliever. Mm-hmm. It's just, why is he not up there? And that's where you have to look more closely. That's where you get nitpicky and pick things apart. But at the end of the day, it's those little things that make the difference. That's what separates. Because there are a ton of guys that you can find in Pawtucket, like, you see guys in AAA who throw in the high 90s all the time, who are, organizational guys. It's the things he needs to separate it's the fastball command and then consistency with the secondaries. And he's improved his secondary. The changeup has gotten a lot more reliable. It looks like a major league quality pitch. And now it's just, is this command for real? And, that's one of those things that we might not know until he gets that first taste of pro ball to see how, or not pro ball, of the major leagues, to see how he handles that. Because that, there's pitching in AAA is one thing, but the Major League Baseball is a completely different animal. The hitters are that much better and everything. And if he's going to be, throwing, he can throw as hard as he wants, but if he's not commanding it at the Major League level, he's still going to get hit. So it's going to be interesting. But I think he's someone who could help the Major League team at some point this summer.
The big drop in the rankings was Sam Travis. After being ranked 10th last month, he drops all the way to 20th. Really a 6-spot drop because of the fact that 4 draftees entered ahead of him. But still, if you look at the Steve Pearce trade, the Steve Pearce trade is necessary because Sam Travis isn't having a good year. With Pawtucket, he's hitting 219, 282, 317. I mean, the OPS is below 600. And at this point, he's not even hitting lefties well. At least last year you could say maybe he's a platoon first baseman, but this year in Pawtucket against left-handed hitters, he's only hitting 222, 300, 370. Whereas last year at least he had an OPS over 850 against them. So kind of disappointing. Where are you on Travis at this point, Ian?
I mean, I think he looks lost at the plate. When I saw him, the bats are just not very competitive, and I don't know if he's not taking to the changes he made in the offseason that the returns were very good during spring training or what, but he's in a tough spot. The profile as a corner guy, he has to hit, and it's a corner guy who can't play third. He has to hit, and he has to hit for power. And I wonder if that's putting pressure on him. And he's not hitting. He's not hitting for power. I mean, the OBP has dropped. I haven't even looked to see what the strikeout rate is like compared to last. Yeah, the strikeout rate is skyrocketed. His career high in strikeout rate before this year was 21% if you just count the minors, 28% if you do in Boston. So I'm just not going to count that considering such a small sample. So his career high in the minors was 21.1%. He's at 30.2% this year. Like, that is brutal. And
the brutal jump for someone who didn't strike out. I mean, that's the thing. Even the 21% was kind of an outlier. I mean, in 2014 and 2015,
usually it was like 15, 16. Yeah. So 30% for him is he's I don't know what it is, but he's someone who I don't see having a significant major league future.
And it's also just, you can't, we hear all about, launch angle, etc. It's not as easy as saying, I am now going to change my launch angle, and redesign. Changing your swing is hard. These are swings that these guys have had since they played, high school ball, since they played Little League. It's not as easy as just adjusting your swing and suddenly you start hitting for power, right? It's not that simple.
It also shows again that spring training stats mean absolutely nothing.
Well, I think it was Red Sox Stats on Twitter, Sox Scout on our forum, who posted something during spring training when Travis was hitting all those home runs that his batted ball profile was not actually any different. He was just getting all of the fly balls he was hitting. And if you look this year, I mean, 50% of balls on the ground in Pawtucket. Fly ball percentage is up 27%, but the line drive rate's down. The fly balls are coming at the expense of line drives if you compare to last year.
And I that's something I've noticed too when you see him. It's that I think he's trying to hit for power, and it's just hurting the rest of his game. It's increasing the strikeout rate. And as you said, he's not making hard contact because he's trying to hit the ball in the air more, except he's not. He's either still grounding out or it's a weak contact in the air. And that's just that's just not a profile you want.
I mean, compare with 2016, which was the year, I think that's the one his season ended because of the torn ACL that we were there for, Ian, right?
Yeah, we're at that game.
The batted ball profile was 44% ground balls, 38.8% fly balls, 6% pop-ups, 18.8% line drives. The ground ball rate is up. The fly ball rate is down. The pop-up percentage is down from 6% to 3.4%, whatever. And the line drive rate is about the same, 18.8% to 19.5%. I mean, the swing changes have done nothing except make him strike out more.
Yeah, it's not ideal.
So it's really disappointing. And again, that's the reason you have to go get Steve Pearce, because they want to go get Steve Pearce to do exactly what even pre-swing change Sam Travis could have been, which is hit against left-handed pitching.
Yep.
So that's just really disappointing. Moving on, Ian, to the back half, or I guess not half, but the back 40, if you will, of the rankings. I don't know what you want to talk about here. In the 21 to 30 range, no debuts. I don't think. Cole Brannon's down to 24. Is probably worth mentioning. But again, that's really only a 3-spot drop because of the fact that 4 draftees entered ahead of him.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about him. I've seen Lowell a few times. And
you want to talk about Williams Jerez at 28?
Yeah,
Jerez is at 27 now, actually.
Yeah, he was interesting just because he's throwing 99 miles an hour right now. So that's
yes,
good.
Ian. Yes, that is interesting.
I mean, it was funny because I've seen him once this year, and it just happened to be his best outing of the year. He struck out 6 of the 7 guys he faced over 2 1/3 innings in relief. And overall, his strikeout rate is up a little bit this year. Our stats page is down when I clicked on his, but yeah, his strikeouts are up. He's still too many walks, and the whip is high. But he's got 52 Ks in 38 innings, and it's easy to see why when he's on, because I mean he's touching 99 from the left side with a decent. It's like a split change, I want to say.
Yeah, hang on. I'll pull up Harris. There's something wrong with this link.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at. It's it's a splitter, which is weird because you don't see many lefties throwing splitters. And then the slider.
So what did you want from him stats?
What was his K percentage?
Oh yeah, strikeout rate this year is 29.7%. Entering this year, I mean, he did that, and he had like 27% in the GCL in 9 games. I mean, so it's kind of tough with relievers because you don't really have many stops with large sample sizes. But
true. But I think what separates Buttrey a little bit from Jerez to me is Buttrey has better secondaries. The Jerez's splitter and slider, I would both say, are average-ish at best. Whereas Buttrey, I do think has a plus secondary, and that's reflected in the rankings for me. But Jerez does have the advantage of being left-handed. So anytime you have a lefty who's touching, the high 90s, it's interesting. And that's why he's kind of right there, because in the system that doesn't have a lot of high upside guys, he's got a reasonably high floor where, he's already in Pawtucket and he's on the 40-man. So he's another one I think we could see at some point this year in the major leagues.
For sure. At the 31 to 40 range, we've got a couple of debuts. Cole Cottom, the 4th rounder, catcher at Lowell. He bows in at number 37. He's followed by his teammate, Jarren Duran, at 38. Duran actually off to a really nice start, 295, 367, 545.
He's interesting, man.
44 at-bats. I mean, the power there, Ian, how much of that is speed-based? Because we heard the speed is plus at least.
No,
I mean, it's 3 triples.
Yeah, he's like a 65, 70 runner.
All right.
Which is, and the thing is, he's not small. That's what I like. He's like 6'2", 200 pounds.
Yeah, he's listed 6'2", 200, yeah.
Athletic. It's interesting because he was at Long Beach State, which I guess I don't know this personally, but just from reading up, they have their coach does weird things with swings. and he led their team in home runs with 2 this year. So I do, and he's already got, I think he hit one last night or sometime this week. He hit a home run.
Yeah, he's got 1 home run.
Yeah, he's not striking out that much, and I'm wondering if I don't know this for a fact, if they tweak the swing or something, because the raw tools are just really interesting, and that's why I think we talked about it, or I talked about it on Twitter maybe or somewhere, that he was one of the guys I was more interested to see, because it's the type of profile that you get. And that's been one of my big complaints about like the way they've drafted is they take these guys and it's like, it seems like kind of a wasted pick, because it's, well, what is the major league carrying tool? And with Duran, you can see it. He's got a major league carrying tool in his speed already.
Well, we've talked about that too, is they drafted a lot of guys with, like you just said, major league carrying tools.
And so if, he's got speed, if he can, play second base, center field, and you tweak the swing a little bit and it allows him to tap into some power, that's a really interesting guy, especially at 6'2". That's a 6'2" guy. That's like a frame that should be able to hit for some power. So he's someone I'm really interested to get a couple more looks at this summer down with Lowell.
Nice. In the back 20, the 41 to 60 range, Ian, we should mention a few guys, the draftees that have debuted in there. Thad Ward, bows in at 45. I mean, he's kind of a tough one to rank because he hasn't played yet.
Yeah, and as a starter, he's on the throwing program, so we'll probably see him some point next 2 weeks, I would say.
Yeah, we'll see him soon. He'll definitely pitch. And then Brandon Howlett is the final draftee to debut. He bows in at number 53, as I mentioned, above slot signing. Has only, the stats aren't even worth talking about. It's 5 games, but he actually 3 doubles in 5 games. I kind of like that.
That's good.
3 of his 4 hits are doubles.
There you go.
Fun. But raw player, was committed to FSU, which my wife would be happy about. So, yeah, good signings there. The other guy we should definitely mention, Ian, making his debut on the rankings at number 44 is a guy that we saw in spring training, or I guess you saw in spring training, because I don't think I saw him that day. I think that was the day I stayed behind to see Houck, right?
Mm-hmm. He was throwing in the low A or high A game? No, low A game.
Low A game, yeah.
Throwing in high A game.
Yep. Because that was Shirley in the high A game.
Yeah.
So that was Alexander Montero, who is with the Lowell Spinners at it's kind of weird with the older DSL guys they signed last year, because he's actually 20 and he'll turn 21 in September. This is Alexander Montero. So, not quite like a 17 or 18-year-old jumping from the DSL straight to Lowell, but still jumping from the DSL straight to Lowell is nice. In Lowell, he's made 2 starts, both pretty good, and you liked what you saw out of him, Ian.
Yeah, it's just his stuff has ticked up. When we saw him in spring training, he was like 90-92 with, I'm trying to bring it up, 90-92 with a splitter, inconsistent, and a slider. But now he's up to 95. He's like 92, 94. Held it pretty well. He was 91, 93 when he got into like his 4th, 5th inning. He's got the split change in the mid to high 80s. Was inconsistent, but he can throw it. He'll throw a few, average-ish ones. And then he's also got his sliders he's tightened it up a little bit. It's now 81, 85. And the problem with him is just his arm slot varies. So some of them, the shape varies. Some are more vertical. Some have a little more tilt. So he's on the raw side, but it's just nice to see the stuff ticking up already and having some success, against the kind of a lot of college bats now that the draft is over. And then obviously you still have some young guys too in the Penn League, but he's 20, so it's young for the Penn League relatively. And just someone who kind of popped up and is now interesting to watch going forward. And
you'll see him again tonight.
Yeah. Oh, is he pitching tonight?
Yep. Yeah, he's starting tonight.
And I will see him again tonight.
The Connecticut Tigers.
Yes, I will.
So that'll be an interesting one for you. So I think that's kind of really, I don't know, is there anyone else in the back second page of the rankings that you want to mention? You can see them there on SoxProspects.com. We've got a lot of DSL guys who are interesting, probably not worth saying too much about yet. We've got Angel or Angel, probably Angel Maeta, one of the Maeta twins who signed with the Red Sox. That would be Angel de Jesus Maeta, not his twin, Jesus Angel Maeta. Maeta playing right field in the DSL, hitting 380, 442, 522. really kind of, one of the statistical stars down there. But again, it's always just kind of tough to get much. But a lot of DSL guys in the back of the rankings, I would say, per usual, Ian, both a comment on the depth in the system. But honestly, after adding all these draftees, I'm kind of okay with where the depth's at. Getting okay, I guess maybe is a better way to put it. What do you think?
Yeah, it's definitely on an upswing. I think I went on the Ness and Red Sox podcast and kind of mentioned it that, that this thing is cyclical. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs. And we kind of reached the bottom point, I think, earlier this year. And now it's kind of on the upswing, where if you look, I feel a lot better about the guys we have in like the 10 to 20 range than I did in the past. It's just this thing it's still missing is just those top 2-3 guys who are the high end prospects. And part of that is obviously through graduation and then trades. So they're still lacking that top end, high end talent, but the middle is beefed up a lot since we've talked about things over the course of the year.
Yeah. Now just go get Victor Mesa to help kind of beef up the top of the.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the number one prospect immediately. So
yes, certainly.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, Ian, do you want to get to some emails, Ian? Let's get to some emails. Yes, we haven't done emails in a while.
Talk to the peoples. And I should mention too, if you have more like specific questions about ranking of individual players, just get at us on Twitter. That's probably the best way.
Well, Twitter for the quick questions, but I mean, we also want people to email us at podcast@soxprospects.com.
Or check out the forum. There's probably some good rankings discussion going on there too.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. I haven't had a chance to check it yet this morning, but
me neither. But yeah, I just assume because our forum posters are all very smart for the most part.
No, we love our forum posters. Yeah. We love them. Okay, let's get to some emails. Again, it's podcast@soxprospects.com. We want to talk about what you want to hear about. Our first email actually has been sitting in my inbox for a minute, because, frankly, it slipped through the cracks. So sorry, Russ. This email is from Russ. And he says, gentlemen, when the Braves had to let some of their minor leaguers hit the free market, this was last year, I was surprised the Red Sox didn't jump in. Any reason for that? Was that tied in with their penalty on spending that was handed down? When is that over with? Thanks, Russ. Russ, it had nothing to do with penalties. They are no longer being punished. They are back up to full strength on the international front. It was just they had no money left. Although I guess teams could count it against this year's cap as well because it happened so late. But
the problem is most teams already had this year's cap
committed.
Budgeted. I don't know. Yeah.
Right.
How do we legally say that? Allegedly committed.
Budgeted, I think is a good way to put it.
They just, and the guys, it didn't seem like it was that many. Like Maitan was the top guy, but he doesn't look good at all. And
there really weren't any huge ticket guys at this point. Some of them were relatively highly regarded, but I don't think it was anyone. It definitely wasn't anyone that would be in the top 20 of the system right now.
Yeah, I don't think there were any game changers. So.
Maybe guys would be in like the back 20 of the rankings, but
given how much money a lot of them got, I think a lot of them got like 6 figures or more. You can't risk, if the Red Sox were maxed out last year, and if they rolled it over to this year, you risk, straining relationships with guys you already have signed for this year. You just can't do that.
Right.
So they were kind of, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, because then you get their trainer who says, "Oh yeah, I remember when I dealt with the Red Sox and they backed out on a deal because they wanted to go sign a different guy." If you really want to commit to that, go for it.
That's the international market for you.
Yeah. So thanks for the question, Russ. Sorry, it took us a minute to get to it. Our next question comes from Austin. He says, "Hey Sox prospects, love your work. I have a draft question. People have noticed an obvious lack of high school pitching prospects taken in the draft, presumably by the Red Sox. Do you think international signings may be a part of that? I remember last year they didn't sign many infielders early, but then signed several internationally." Ian, my initial reaction to that was no, you want to get as many guys as possible, but honestly, there might be something to it. I don't think you can line up this year's international class and this year's draftees, because this year's international class are playing in like the DSL next year.
Yeah, they're like 2 levels behind.
Right. So, and again, it makes sense. You're talking 16-year-olds and 18-year-olds, right? If you're comparing high school draftees and international signees, right? Mm-hmm. But when you do look at, the rosters at the lower levels this year, if you look at Lowell and if you look at the Gulf Coast Red Sox, they're both populated. The rotations are almost all international.
I hadn't really noticed that. Yeah, you're right.
If you look at Lowell, 3 of the 5 are international, and Edward Bizardo, Yorvin Pantoja, and Montero.
And Brian Brown is that's an org, senior, that's like a senior sign guy that is just eating innings. He's getting piggybacked by another international guy.
That's exactly what I was about to say. Is Juan Perez was originally in the rotation, and then he's piggybacking Brian Brown now. Thad Ward will bump someone from the rotation. We'll see, what it winds up being. Is it someone goes to the bullpen, or will it be, someone bumps up to Greenville? Might they give Hunter Hayworth another shot at Greenville? Another guy you've seen recently. Check out Ian's scouting scratch on him.
It's coming tomorrow.
On news.soxprospects.com. But, then you look into GCL, the entire rotation is international. Although I guess Ryan Fernandez started a doubleheader game yesterday, so I don't know if they're going to be moving him into the rotation. Fernandez was a 23rd round pick out of Hillsborough Community College this year, so that he might be starting. But other than him, it's Rainiel Adames, Yasel Santana, Edelson Batista, and Jose Gonzalez, all guys coming out of the international program for the Red Sox. So I think there might be something to it, just on you only have so many innings sort of thing. I still think if there were a high school starting pitcher there that they wanted, they would have popped them. But, I think there's an innings piece to that.
Yeah, I mean, when you're in the draft, you take the best player available, especially, in the beginning of the draft. But I think it's just kind of how the board fell this year. But if you look, looking at the rankings, they do have a lot of international guys, starter-wise. You got guys like Mata, Darwinson Hernandez, Renel Raudes are all in the top 30. Mm-hmm. And whereas, the only drafted starting prospect in the top 30 is Schwarren, Beeks, and Groom and Houck. But I think Houck's a reliever. Beeks, debatable still. Schwarren, debatable still. So, yeah, it is. It just seems like that starting pitching as a whole is something they're kind of taking a new, way to the new route forward. Where I don't know if it's de-emphasizing it is the right word, but it just seems like, given how little success they've had with it, that maybe they're starting a new path of developmental wise and trying some new things.
Yeah. The other kind of interesting piece of it, though, that you have to think about is high school pitching is considered the most volatile commodity in the draft.
It's also generally the hardest to sign.
Well, then exactly. So the thing is with high school pitchers, if you're drafting and signing a high school pitcher, it's on day 1 or day 2. Yeah. You don't see a lot of day 3 high school pitchers. You'll see day 3 high school position players like this year with Nick Northcutt and Brandon Howlett. But if you look last year, there was Aaron Perry.
But a lot of those guys are not going to be starters.
Well, right. And it's just, like we said, you're only taking so many high school starting pitchers to begin with. In 2016, it was Jay Groom, and I think that might have been it for high school starting pitchers. But because the first pick was a high school starting pitcher, it didn't seem like they didn't take any. So it might be just that it's a perception thing more than anything. So great question from Austin. Even
last year, they only took Scherf and Aaron Perry in terms of high school arms.
Yep.
So, not took. That's incorrect. Signed was the right way.
Signed. Yeah. Yep, fair.
But it's just, I don't know. It's on the one hand, you kind of look in high school pitchers' track record is not great. If you look both in
and that's why they're volatile.
So I kind of get that, especially when you're a down system like they are. You don't really want to. If you're going to take risks, I would go other ways than high school pitching, if that makes sense.
True ball.
So, yeah. What was that?
Trey ball.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Okay. I thought you were sneezing at first, but yes.
No, I did sneeze. Sorry.
Anyway, so yeah.
Great question from Austin.
Very good question.
Our next question comes from Brian Morelli of Sox Signatures, Ian. And Brian asks, not sure when you guys will record next, but hoping this will still be relevant. Thanks, Brian. What do you guys make of the recent trend of Sox pitchers with non-plus, quote, stuff, putting up very impressive numbers in the upper minors? Beeks, Shepard, Kent, though he's in – okay, he says Kent, though he's in high A, but he's in double A. And Hart are a few examples that come to mind. When I see an ERA start with a 2 and or a strikeout or more per inning, it's very exciting, but reading the scouting report and seeing a fastball under 91 miles per hour and no, quote, special pitch like Mariano's cutter or Hoffman's changeup, Interesting. Those are both closers. I assume they probably will barely get a chance in the majors. How can you distinguish between an actual, quote, prospect that gets the most out of his limited velocity natural talent and a quad A pitcher that learned how to get minor leaguers out but is crushed by big leaguers? Again, thank you, Brian, for the question. I mean, it's a good question, Ian. I think what it comes down to is there's kind of this survival bias that you get of pitchers in the major leagues where it's like, oh, they pitched great in the minors. But there are a lot of pitchers that pitch great in the minors and don't become great in the majors. I mean, or they become relievers, right? I mean, if you look at Matt Barnes, was a guy who was a starter all the way up, had, really great numbers in Portland. Well, maybe not great numbers, but good numbers. I mean, he struck out 135 and 108 innings in Portland as a starter, and now he's a 7th, 8th inning guy.
Yeah.
It's hard to pitch in the majors, and I think that's really it.
It's the jump from AAA to the majors is massive.
Huge, and it's bigger than it's ever been.
And I think it's bigger for pitchers than it is for hitters. Mm-hmm. Like, you see guys like Henry Owens, was a highly regarded prospect, just couldn't do it, Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter how good your stuff is at AAA. Major league hitters are a completely different animal. The way they adjust, the amount of information they have available to them, mm-hmm. where, if you throw one outing in the major league level, the book's out. I mean, before you even get there, the book's out on you because they have video, they have everything from scouts.
TrackMan.
TrackMan data. There's just so much information readily available that it's just made being a pitcher that much more difficult. And the bar is so high now. Mm-hmm. To be a major league starter, you need to be able to turn the lineup over 2-3 times. You need to throw strikes. You need to be able to miss bats. And there just aren't very many pitchers who have all those qualities. And we're seeing it. I mean, the Red Sox system is a great example of it.
Oh, look at the Rays, man. I mean, the Rays rotation is 2 guys and 3, yet to be announced. I mean,
they start relievers.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy.
Smart. I kind of like it. But
I mean, it's crazy, but it's good crazy.
But like when you mentioned a guy like Matt Kent, and he's someone who fits the definition of just a perfect, like a great org guy for me. He can go out there, he's going to get you. He'll throw you 5, 6, 7 innings a game. He'll keep you competitive, but at the end of the day, I mean, this stuff, it's just he tops out at 88. It's like 86, 88. And when you're in AA, even sometimes in AAA, that can play. If you can command the ball, you can mix your pitches, and you just throw a bunch of junk, that can get hitters out. Because you've got a combination of, you've got the aggressive prospecty hitters, and then you've got the more, seasoned veterans who might not have the great tools. That can play, but at the big league level, you're facing the best of the best, and that's the kind of stuff that doesn't work, and that's why it's such a separator. And you see, as you said, even like a guy like Barnes throws in the high 90s, and he's got a plus secondary, but if the command isn't there and you don't have a third pitch, you can't be a starter. Mm-hmm. So,
right,
it's tough. Pitching is tough, man.
Baseball is hard.
It is.
Baseball is very hard, but I mean, it's a good question.
Yeah.
Good question. Thanks for the question, Brian, and thanks for your support on patreon.com/Sox Prospects. We've got another question from Russ. Russ, thank you for continuing to email, even though we kind of blew off your first question for a couple months. He goes, to whom it may concern. He sent this 3 days ago. I can't believe, bold and underlined, all minor league teams, he means in the system, just went 2 days without a victory. I know there are some pitchers, but who in the minor leagues should we be following as hitters? Is there anyone who appears to be more than a probable MLB bench player when looking at their hitting tools? Thanks, Russ G. Obviously a little bit of frustration. Yeah, the one-loss record over the past week or so has been not great.
There was like that graphic I think I sent around that was like win-loss records of minor league affiliates. Mm-hmm. And there was every team was like kind of close to 500, or every organization was like close to 500. And then there's the Red Sox were down at like 410 or something. It was like,
it was not a great look. I mean, we've talked about this, Ian. There's not a lot of position player depth in the system right now. If you look at the top 10, it's Chavis. I mean, Chavis is kind of the obvious answer here. Well, Chavis says he comes back from the suspension
if he reaches his ceiling.
Tristan Casas is at 4, and other than that, it's pitchers until Josh Ockamy at 8, who I'm the high one on among us. But then we do have some guys who we grade them all out as 4.5s, but Josh Ockamy, C.J. Chatham, Nick Decker, Bobby Dahlbeck.
I mean, you have guys with upside there.
You've got guys with upside. I mean, I guess Dahlbeck's a 4 right now, but I mean, Dahlbeck, if he can solve the strikeout issues, which is no small thing, Chatham. I mean, Chatham's just got to stay on the field is really his thing.
With Chatham, you just need to know he's not going to hit for power. He's not going to be an impact bat, but I think there's enough to hold down like a fringy everyday role potentially. Mm-hmm. Maybe not for the Red Sox necessarily, but second division type.
And with Ockamy, it's just a matter of proving it as a first base bat.
He's got to make more contact though. I mean, he's at 250 now.
Yeah, but I think a lot of that. I think
he's slumping big time right now.
Huge right now.
I mean the walk rate's good. The K rate is a little high, but interesting with Ockamy that his line drive rate is down a ton this year, and his ground ball rate is way up. So
Ockamy just had an 0 for 18 skid, and let's see, dating back, he doubled yesterday, which was good, but before that, I mean, I guess he hit a couple home runs, but okay, yeah. So from June the 17th through yesterday, he was 3 for 41 with 18 strikeouts, but with 14 walks. I mean, at least he keeps walking, which is a good thing. But he was hitting 073 with a 309 on base.
Yeah, that's wild. I would say though that it is a fair question. And looking at 11 to 20, there are more interesting guys than there have been in the last couple of cycles of doing this. I mean, with Dahlbeck, Diaz, Flores, and Northcutt, that's 4 pretty interesting bats right there who at least have ceilings of guys who could start. So that's a good sign.
Yeah, the starter ceiling's there. And I think this draft, the fact that 3 of their top 4 guys that they got were, position players. And then you look at Diaz and Flores and the DSL and maybe some of those other guys that might come up, the Maetas, the Dan Rafaelas of the world that we don't know a lot about yet. It'll be interesting to see which of those guys pop up and become that next wave of potential position players. But yeah, they're down right now, but have faith. Have faith. Thanks for your second question, Russ. And our final podcast question comes from Tim. Tim says, "Hi guys, big fan of the site. I know I'm only supposed to ask one question, but I think the first will be a quick answer. So here's 2. Fine, Tim, write your own rules. Anyway, all right, his first question. I have seen you describe players on the site as, quote, organizational depth, and I am not entirely sure what that means. Are these non-prospects that fill rosters but are never considered as a major league depth option? Ian, you can take that one really quick.
Yeah, organizational depth just means it's a guy who probably doesn't have a major league future, but is someone who will be able to stick around the organization in the high minors for several years and just be a solid, everyday AAA or AA player. Guys, a good example of that, someone like Mike Miller.
Yeah, Mike Miller was who I was thinking of.
He got that cup of coffee, but he's now 28 in Pawtucket. He's been in the system since 2012, and you keep re-signing him because he's the type of guy who he's not going to kill you. I mean, he'll go out, he can hit, 250, 260 with minimal power, but plays good defense, helps your pitchers. Kind of a quality, steady presence, and you can't have a prospect at every position. I mean, that's just not realistic, especially when you get to the high minors, given the attrition rates. So you need those type of guys that will just come in, consummate professionals, do their job every day. Good in the clubhouse, yeah. And then with pitchers, it's guys who can come out and just eat innings. I'm looking like Dedgar Jimenez is a good example for me. I mean, he's actually more a prospect still since he's 22, but for me, he's like an org guy. He can go out, he'll give you 5, 6, 7 innings every start, or Matt Kent, as we talked about in a previous email. Mm-hmm. So yeah, they're just kind of the guys you need to balance out the system with. The guys who have the more major league potential. You need those other guys who will stick around for a while and just get the job done. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you see those guys like Dan Butler, guys who just are around. You're probably never going to see them in the majors for more than a cup of coffee, but they do their jobs. They aren't black holes in the lineup. They usually play good defense.
Yeah, guys like Ivan DeJesus is another example, though he has more major league. He has a little more major league. Cole Sturgeon's a good one.
Sturgeon was the other guy I was going to say.
Yeah, and then like pitchers, like guys like Josh Smith, who you can sign out of. Yeah, there are several, but yeah, he's been in affiliated ball. He's now 28, but he puts up decent numbers and gets the job done. So
Josh Dee Smith, you mean the lefty?
Yes, I was just looking at the first. He was just the first one I clicked on. I'm sure Josh A. Smith might be similar. Yeah,
well, Josh Dee Smith. The thing with him, I mean, he's bounced between starting and relieving for them this year. Guys like that who they'll go out and do whatever role you want them to do. You're like, hey, you want 5 innings today? I'll give you 5 innings today. Mm-hmm. You want me to pitch back to backs? I'll pitch back to backs.
Well, like Trevor Kelly's another guy like that who he just got promoted to Pawtucket, and I don't think it was like a promotion. It's more like, hey, we need an arm. Come up here. We trust you to get guys out. So yeah,
that's a sidearm righty.
Exactly.
So good question. And again, quick note before I get to Tim's second question, but folks, don't think that any question is like too dumb or anything. Because if we say something you don't know what we're talking about, we want to make sure you know what we're talking about. So,
and also just like when we call someone an organizational player, that's still good.
Yeah. It's not, there are a lot of guys, there
are a lot of guys who, most of the guys in the system, we don't even call organizational players. Mm-hmm. Like there's a lot of guys in the system who aren't going to get out of the high A. So if you can get up to double or triple A and make a career out of it for 5-10 years, that's still a pretty good end result. Obviously those guys want to make it to the major leagues, but if you can't do that, that's still a pretty good, career.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Tim's second question. I mostly catch Portland games. While there isn't much to be excited about besides Josh Ockme and Mike Schwarin, are there any players that you see something in that could maybe get a cup in the next couple of years from the Portland roster? And you've seen them a couple times this year. And pull up the Portland roster. Anybody there you think you find interesting besides those two guys?
Lakins is the obvious one. Right. Out of the pen, I think that there's major league potential there.
This year or no?
I don't think so because he's not on the 40, and they have guys like Buttrey.
They have a lot of relievers on the 40.
Yeah, Tyler Thornburg's going to be coming back pretty soon. I'm trying to bring up their roster.
Portland, I mean, looking at it,
player-wise.
You kind of like, well, I was going to throw you Jordan Weems as a guy that you find interesting.
That's what I was going to say, pitching, because I was just looking at position players. Position player-wise, like, we kind of mentioned Chad De La Guerre maybe, but he's actually had a pretty good year after really bad start with Pawtucket.
A lot of which seemed to be tied into BABIP luck, frankly, but it was bad enough that it made sense to send him down, let him catch his feet. Yeah. I mean, he hit 137 on a 176 BABIP, even though his line drive rate was 20%. I mean, come on.
Yeah. I mean, and he's still he's right on the cusp between an award guy and like a utility player for me. Mm-hmm. And then, I guess Jordan Weems just as a conversion project, he's interesting. His fastballs, he's another one guy kind of like Harris, where the stuff has just consistently been ticking up. And, as the most recent I saw him, I think he was up to 96, with decent breaking ball. So he's someone who, the stats obviously don't look that good, which I'm not surprised him is a conversion. It takes time, but if he can continue to improve as a pitcher, then you never know.
Yeah, man. I mean, that maybe as an off-season episode of the podcast, just going back and looking at that 2011 draft. I feel like I say this every episode. Man, what an interesting draft that is.
It's wild.
4 first-rounders. The second and third rounder are now converted pitchers. Fourth rounder wound up being pretty good. Or was it the fifth? No, the fourth rounder is Noe, and then Noe.
It's good. It's in the big leagues.
Yeah, and then the fifth rounder is the fifth rounder is one of the top 5 players in baseball. So
and the 9th rounder is good.
Yeah,
and the 16th rounder was a big leaguer.
And then multiple guys have done jail time
and played in the NFL.
All right. Well, that closes out our questions. Thank you, Tim, and to everyone else who sent in a question. Again, podcast@soxprospects.com. I thought about mentioning this at the top, but I'll probably say here, I can't really give a full accounting, but my issue that led to me not being able to record as often as we would have liked is kind of working itself out. Don't want to say anything yet, but I think we might be pretty good going forward, Ian. So, it's kind of job related. I will talk about it in the future, but not right now. Don't want to jinx anything, but I think.
Jeez.
It's nothing to worry teased about. But thank you all for bearing with us. Like I said, we should be pretty good going forward. Ian, we'll be back on the horn soon, I guess.
Yeah, and the system's on an uptake, so we can. It will give us more to talk about going forward.
And hey, when you're about to complain about the fact that You know what? Maybe to a pessimist, the Boston Red Sox farm system has been kind of a dumpster fire. I suggest you do something, and that something is this: you go to your Google machine, you type in MLB standings, and you look at who's got the best record in baseball.
Is it the Yankees?
Nope.
Tigers?
Nope. Oh God, no. No, it's not. It's not the Astros either. It's the hometown team. At,
the Red Sox of Boston.
56-28. Boston Red Sox.
56-28 is and when you're thinking about that, remember that if you look at the core of this team, Rafael Devers came from the farm. Xander Bogaerts came from the farm. Andrew Benintendi came from the farm. Marcus Lindbetz came from the farm. Jackie Bradley came from the farm, though that's probably not a good one to mention, considering.
Yeah, he's starting to turn it around.
But they have a lot of homegrown guys there, and that's obviously what the farm is for. But that's also why it's down a little bit, is you do have some guys who, in other systems, maybe would still have rookie eligibility. So it's an exciting team to watch, and we'll see what happens going forward.
Jackie Bradley since June 14th, 277, 346, 511. Ian
seems good.
He's good. Give him time.
All
right, people. Well, thank you all for downloading. Thank you for listening. For Ian, I'm Chris. Follow Ian on Twitter at Ian Cundall. That's IANCUNDALL. Follow me at SP Chris Hatfield. Thank you all for listening. Thank you to our podcast producer and editor, Joe Tetrault. We'll be back in your eardrums soon, everybody. Peace.